Hey guys, Mark here, and in this video, I'm going to show you how, if I have a white monster and a Wi-Fi connection, how I can make $100,000 with branded dropshipping. And in this video, I'm going to share what I believe to be the greatest unfair advantage when it comes to selling products on the internet, period, especially for branded dropshipping. But before we do that, we have to find a freaking product to sell. Now, when it comes to actually finding what most people call like a winning product, I like to think of it about creating a winning product because I don't think they're found to create it, but that's a whole nother story. Point being, my philosophy for finding winning products is actually incredibly simple. The main thing that I'm looking for, number one, is good margins. So this actually means two things. Number one, you need to be able to sell the product for at least 3x what you're getting it at cost. So if I find a product I can get on AliExpress, for example, for $10, I have to sell that for a minimum of $30. That's like the first rule. The second rule is it has to have at least a $20 margin, because technically, according to the first rule, you can find a product that's like $1 and sell for $3. That's dog shit margins, right? I want at least $20 of gross margin before I factor in my advertising costs, taxes, and everything else. I promise that'll set you up on the right foot. Okay, that is rule number one. Rule number two, also very simple. I only want to sell products that are validated, right? I know a lot of people in the dropshipping space, especially, they have this philosophy that you should find these untapped winning products, right? Products that nobody else has sold before. You're the first one to it. This is wrong for a few reasons. Number one, you're never going to be first. At very best, you're going to be competing for second. And number two, there's already so many variables when it comes to starting an e-commerce business. Why would you add more and sell a product that you don't actually know you can sell, that you don't know that people are buying? And so what I'm actually looking for here is at least 300,000 monthly visitors to their competitor's website. So for example, I'm going to look for a product in just a second here, but I want to see a website that is driving at least 300,000 visitors per month in traffic. Now, does that mean that they're making good money? Most likely, yes. Of course, we can't always estimate, the revenue. I know there's a lot of softwares out there. They're bullshit. But what we're looking for and what can't be faked a lot of times is traffic, right? So this is going to be the main thing that we're looking at. And then the final simple rule that I have, of course, after good margins and selling a validated product, is it has to be in what I like to call emotional market, right? I like selling emotional products in emotional markets because markets actually precede the product itself, right? You can have a winning product, but if your market is terrible, your market's not hungry and full of buyers, it's going to be really difficult to sell. It's just going to be an uphill battle the whole time. I want to sell products that I can tap into all these really cool, creative emotions through my copywriting so I can sell the product most effectively. So let me actually show you how to do that. So I'm going to hop into my software here called Get Hooked. You don't have to use it. It just kind of speeds up the process. If you want the free version, you can just use the Facebook ads library, all right? But I'm going to set up a few filters here so I can find the most successful ads that are already running on Facebook right now, and ideally find a brand that is generating at least 300,000 visits per month. So I actually have a document here of all the different filters that you can use on Get Hooked. So if you guys want to use this to find VSLs or to find static ads, I have a few others on here that you can check out. Just click the first link in the description. You can check it out. For now, I'm actually going to filter for short form videos. So under 60 seconds long, but ads that are actually proven to work. All right, so we got the filters. Now I'm going to just scroll through these ads. Now they got my filter set, and find a brand, ideally, that is selling a product that matches the criteria that I had. This will take you just a few minutes, literally, if you're using Get Hooked. For Facebook, obviously, it'll take a little bit longer because you don't know if the ad is actually converting. But on Get Hooked, you can see the ad rating and the score up there. All right, so I scrolled for a few minutes, and I actually found this really cool supplement brand for dogs called Dog is Human. If this is your brand, I apologize, but you're doing a great job. And the cool part about Get Hooked is you can essentially see how many ads this brand is launching month over month. And ideally, you want to see an upwards trend, up and to the right. In this case, there's a slight decline, but it's not a lot. They're still testing over 1,000 ads consistently every single month. And if we look at their landing page here, where they're driving the majority of the traffic, let me see how much traffic they are generating. Yeah, so there is a decline, which is not exactly a great sign, but it's not always a bad thing either. I've read brands before that technically looks like there's a decline in traffic, but we're actually making more and more money. So in this particular case, it is still generating, even the lowest month, over 300,000 visits per month. So this is going to be what I would call a validated product. Now, this is obviously a supplement. Use your own discretion for selling supplements, especially to pets, but just for marketing purposes and to show you how my process works, I'm going to focus on this brand here. Another cool thing about supplements, because I do have a supplement brand myself, is the margin. A lot of supplements you can actually source for like $5 or less shipped to the United States. So it's very, very healthy margin. These guys, in this case, they're of course pushing for subscriptions, but if it's a one-time purchase, they're selling for $46. I'm guessing they're getting this for anywhere from like $5 to $7 shipped. So their margins are absolutely fantastic. They're meeting all the profitability rules, and it is in that super, super emotional market, right? The only thing that humans love more than their kids is their pets. And a lot of times they love their pets more than their fucking kids. So with that being the case, I know that there's all kinds of really cool emotions that I can kind of play on to sell this product. All right, so we got the first part of this process done. We have officially found a product. Let's move on to step number 2. And step number 2 is actually a process that most people will just completely neglect, right? A lot of people, when you find a successful brand, they'll just like copy everything one-to-one, and then it won't work. And they'll be like, well, what happened? Like, they're successful, I copied everything. That's not how it freaking works, okay? They have a significant competitive advantage over you because they've been spending so much money on ads, building so much data on their pixel, on their ad account, that they'll just destroy you. You know, you have a completely fresh ad account, fresh pixel, and so they have what's called a data advantage over you. But the question you should be asking is, how can I compete? And so anytime that I'm going into a new market and selling a new product, this is the first question that I'm asking, because I do not want to compete with people that I can't identify at least one competitive advantage that I can outcompete them on. That's the exact reason why so many people, so many of like the copycat dropshippers end up just like either churning and burning products or just never finding success in the first place, because they're not competing on anything. They're just copying everything one-to-one. So the question you need to ask is, how can I compete? I spent some time going through this brand, and there's a whole number of things that you can compete on. If you want to see, like, I made this whole video about like all the competitive advantages I can think of. If you want access to that, just go to my IG, Mark Builds Brands, and DM me the word competitor. But in this case, if I was looking at this brand, I'm trying to analyze what I can beat them at. And if you look right here, you can see all the landing pages that they're driving traffic to, right? This first one, which is the one that I just had open, is just a PDP, a traditional product page, right? And if you look at this one here, this is the exact same thing, but with a different product. And then only 5% of the traffic is actually going to this page, which once again, traditional PDP, just using a different angle. So immediately I see a weakness that I can potentially exploit with my own brand. The whole concept of how can I compete and actually finding a potential competitive advantage is actually based off this book, one of the most famous books of all time, called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And I read that book a long time ago, but the one thing that I remember that was repeated over and over and over again is, when it comes to your enemy, you should identify their weakness and exploit it to the highest level that you possibly can. Now, that's pretty fucking dark, and that's made in the context of war. But in a lot of ways, business is war. And so when I look at this brand, I immediately see one thing that I can completely exploit and outcompete them on, and that is, of course, the funnel. And if you don't know what a funnel is, all I mean when I say funnel is the process of getting somebody who has no idea about your company to turning them into a buyer. And a buyer, ideally, at the highest average order value is humanly possible. And so this is the way immediately that I see that I can outcompete these guys, because they're driving all their traffic to these very basic PDPs. And that's not a bad thing. It can work for a lot of brands, but I'm a super duper direct response nerd, and I've been doing this stuff for a lot of years. So this is what I would choose in terms of how I can actually outcompete them, because this is where my skill set lies. Like, this is my bread and butter. This is my fucking shit. Now, what this brand here is essentially doing is they're running these short form video ads, which I look through the ads and they're really quite good. So that's why I'm not going to be competing on creatives with them, because their creatives are very solid, but they're driving their ad all directly to a PDP, specifically on Shopify. And don't get me wrong, I love Shopify. I think it's great for a lot of things. I also think it's absolute dog shit for a lot of things. And one of those things being customizability with your funnel architecture, right? So what I'm drawing out right here, you know, I'm not done obviously, but this is essentially your funnel architecture. If you were to zoom out 30,000 feet, what does your funnel actually look like? So we go from a short form ad to a PDP, and then, you know, we can continue going through this process, but it's just going to be add to cart, goes directly to the cart, and then the checkout process on Shopify after that. So it's PDP to the cart page and then directly to the checkout. Now, I didn't go through and actually buy this product, so I don't know actually what comes after the checkout. Maybe they're doing something right and have at least one upsell post-purchase, ideally, but I know for a fact that there is a lot of room that I can outcompete these guys on, specifically on funnel economics. So the result of a funnel like this is you can probably have a pretty solid conversion rate, but one really important thing is going to be lacking, and that is your AOV, your average order value. So think about it this way. If this is the way that this brand is running their ads, and let's say they have average order value of like $50, if I can come in and even have the same conversion rate, so I'm getting the same amount of customers coming in, but instead of every single customer that's coming in being worth $50, every single customer that comes in for me is worth $100. And I know you're thinking, Mark, how the hell is that possible? Like, obviously a lot easier said than done. Well, that's what I'm going to show you right now. And that's the little open loop that I got you in the beginning of this video, talking about the most unfair scaling advantage that exists right now in e-commerce. And that is using a specific funnel architecture that, by the way, isn't even including advertorials. I know I'm really, really bullish on advertorials, and yeah, I'm still bullish on advertorials. I have been on for quite a long time. But what I'm referring to right now is running what's called a quiz funnel. Okay, so quiz funnel is one of the most simplest inventions of all freaking time time, but it's also one of the most profitable, because the cool thing about a quiz is if we compare the structure of the competitor where they're running the short form ad directly to PDP, what does a quiz funnel structure actually look like? Well, first things first, we are going to have still the same kind of short form ad, right? But instead of going to a PDP, immediately after they click the link, they're actually going to go to a quiz. Now, why do quiz funnels actually work and why are they so successful right now? Well, there's a few reasons for this, but the number one reason that quiz funnels work is because of a little term called micro agreements. Now, I actually learned this from one of my mentors, but this dates back to one of the greatest marketing books of all time called Breakthrough Advertising. And this is essentially the process of gradualization, because imagine as soon as somebody lands on the product page here, you basically go from an ad that's about a product to immediately buy my shit, buy my shit, buy my shit. And the reason that can oftentimes be an inferior funnel architecture is because you're doing no foreplay in the context of e-commerce, right? In the same way that if you're in the fucking bedroom, you just try to get straight to it, it ain't gonna work out too well, all right? I know a lot of you aren't familiar with that, but just telling you from experience, doesn't work too great. Well, why would it be any different with your customers? Oh man, hopefully that analogy does not go too far. But point being, if you are able to build up this emotional momentum and get these micro agreements in the quiz, a lot of times you can see an increase in your conversion rate and also an increase in your average order value. And I'll get to that in just one second. But specifically your conversion rate, let's talk about first, because all marketing is a series of tiny little decisions. From the time that somebody sees your ad, they're making a decision to continue watching. When they get to your product page or your sales page, they're making a decision to scroll down and get all the info. They're making a decision to put in their credit card. There's all these tiny little micro decisions that they have to make. And when you use a quiz funnel that starts with these very, very low barrier questions, for example, like how old is your dog? What breed is your dog? Do you have like a small, medium, or large size dog? Like all these tiny little questions are super non-invasive. And this is using a process called, there's no fancy term for it. It's just hiding the sales process, right? The better that you can hide the sales process, nobody likes being sold to. So if you're able to properly hide the sales process, then you can oftentimes see a significant boost in your conversion rate and your average order value. Quiz funnels, you get the micro agreements, but another really cool thing, and I'm getting pretty fucking, deep here, but another thing that you can do in the quiz funnel, it's not just about the micro agreements, it's also about another concept called seeding, okay? I believe that all marketing is, at the end of the day, is belief change work. So just like you watching this video right now, just like me making this video, everybody coming into your business before they buy, they have a specific set of beliefs. And a lot of times there are limiting beliefs on that set of beliefs, which means they are beliefs that are limiting them from purchasing your product. So what seeding is essentially installing these empowering beliefs that align with the purchasing of your product. So for example, in this context, maybe a limiting belief that people have about a dog supplement, I'm totally making this up because I haven't done the research, but let's say there's this belief that humans believe that their dogs cannot properly digest the vitamins, so they're not actually going to get any output. Let's say there's very low bioavailability of these particular supplements. Well, what you can do as a quiz is add these little cards that essentially overcome that limiting belief. So you're basically pre-selling people before they even have the opportunity to buy the product. And so that's one of the reasons this is so powerful, because when you actually do get to the next step, which let's say is your sales page, whether that's on Shopify, Funnel List, Checkout Champ, it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter what the quiz is built on either. All that matters is that it works and that it's not ugly as all fucking hell. But when people actually get to the sales page, right? When we compare it to this funnel structure, think about how warmed up they are. You have all these micro commitments that have been built up. You have all these empowering beliefs that have been installed subconsciously into their brain. The conversion rate from here on out for the rest of the funnel is already going to be higher if you actually structure this properly. But I'm trying to over deliver. Let's take it a step further, right? So that's most likely going to increase your conversion rate. Again, if you do it properly, there's like not yes or no, like this will work 100% of the time. But if you execute it properly, it can work really well. But let's take it a step further. From the sales page, we are then going to go to the order page, which is of course the page that you actually collect the payment information. But then we're going to take it a step further, because what most people don't realize about running e-commerce businesses is that this is one of the reasons I don't really like Shopify. This question mark right here is a problem, because you can't really customize the post-purchase process on Shopify just due to the limitations of the software. That's one of the reasons I don't like it. And so what I actually build my funnels on here, everything that you see here, I'm either building it on Funnelish or Checkout Champ. And the cool thing about that is you can customize the post-purchase upsell process, the PPUP. And yeah, I just fucking made that up right now. Why does this actually work? Well, this is what most marketers and most entrepreneurs get wrong about running funnels. The step that happens after you collect the payment information, this step is called the OTO1, right? One-time offer one. OTO1 is by far the most powerful step in your entire funnel. The reason why comes down to human psychology. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know, you're familiar with the term called buyer's remorse, right? Well, buyer's remorse happens because as soon as people put their credit card in and they actually buy something, they are in the most heightened emotional state that they will be probably in the history of your business. And so you can do one of two things. You can either just like kind of let them go, or you can take that opportunity to upsell them an additional product. And this is the one step that has the highest AOV contribution. Okay. So when you think about, scaling on paid ads, one thing is always true. And that's typically the more money you spend, the more everything goes to shit. Right? Your cost per acquisition is going to go up. Your AOV is going to go down. Your conversion rate is going to go down. But if your AOV is already so high because you have an OTO1 set up, guess what? When your cost per acquisition goes up on Facebook, it doesn't even phase you. It doesn't even matter because you have so much room to play with. And again, when you structure this in the right way, this is how some of the top brands in the space, including mine, are scaling very profitably on cold traffic. And it's just so difficult for you to make this model work here. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's big brands that are doing it. That's cool. But these big brands also have big fucking budgets, right? And to get a brand off the ground, you have to be lean. You're 100% bootstrap, which means you're only using your money to get your brand off the ground. So you have to be extremely lean and collect as much cash as humanly possible from your customers when they buy from you. So this is OTO1. So what comes after that is kind of the question, right? Well, that would be, of course, you guessed it, OTO2, right? Just because you do one doesn't mean that you can't do two. And a lot of people go on for like OTO3, OTO4, OTO5. That's ultimately your decision because I think there is a balance to strike between direct response, upselling, and customer satisfaction. Because if you do it incorrectly, your customers are going to fucking hate you. But there is a correct way to do it to where you can still have a good relationship with your customers and have a high average order value. And that's what this funnel structure is all about. So having the quiz on the front end is a great way for you to increase your conversion rate, get more customers coming through the door. And then this play right here, customizing your post-purchase upsell process, is what's going to ultimately increase your AOV, which means one really important thing. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from this marketer, Dan Kennedy, absolute legendary marketer, probably on the Mount Rushmore of marketers. And he said this: the business that can spend the most to acquire a customer wins. Which means if this is like my competitor, right, A, and I'm down here, this guy can spend, let's say, $30 to acquire a customer and break even. Whereas me, using my fucking Chad scaling method over here, let's say that I can spend $80 to acquire a customer, which means I can spend more than 2 times my competitor to acquire customers. So in the context of the algorithms on Facebook, you're just going to destroy all your competition. Like, no problem. And I really think this is the most unfair scaling advantage that you could possibly have in e-com right now. Now, of course, even zooming out, you're like, holy shit, Mark, this is really overwhelming. Yeah, but if it were easy, everybody would be fucking doing it. I didn't say this was going to be the easiest, video to get your brand off the ground, but I did say that's going to be one of the most unfair and one of the most effective. Now, one final thing I wanted to touch on here is the ads, right? Because the ads are a very important piece in the success of this entire model, right? And I'm not personally a big fan of ripping ads, right? I don't go to my competitors and I don't fucking steal their ads one-to-one. I don't go to Callow Data and steal ads and try to run them on Facebook. I'm not going to knock the method. I'm not here to judge, but I do think that genuinely I can do better than a lot of these successful ads. So what I do is I want to take the philosophy behind why the top ads are successful and just reverse engineer it for myself. And one of the frameworks that you can use to do this is something called the PIG method, right? The PIG method. And this was popularized by a copywriter named Chris Haddad, and shout out to Chris. He's an amazing copywriter. But this stands for punch in the gut. Punch in the gut. And this is a framework that you can use for the hooks of your ads. So this is exactly what I would do if I was starting out, right? I would follow the process that I have for my foundational docs, which again, I'll leave a link to that in the description. And I would do all this research on my customer. And what happens when you do deep research using AI, you have all these quotes directly from people that are in your market, your potential customers. And I'll take those direct quotes and play around with AI, specifically using Claude, because I think it's best for AI copywriting. And I will basically generate these pig hooks to draw people in so that they actually watch the rest of my ad. Because the number one most important thing, the number one factor that's going to tell you if you have a successful ad or not is going to be the hook. If you fuck up the hook, doesn't fucking matter what's after the hook. Doesn't matter if that's the best ad on the planet after those first 3 to 5 seconds. You already fucked up. You lost a customer. Give up. But if you use the pig framework, you can tie people in. Because remember, going back to the product research, you want to sell emotion emotional products. This method doesn't work if you're selling like fidget spinners and fucking gadgets, because it's not a super emotional market. But if you're able to use these emotions at your disposal, it just opens up this like massive directory of super powerful emotional hooks that you can use to draw in your customers. All right, so that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If all this stuff interests you and you want to go a little bit deeper, and more importantly, you want to have somebody like help you set all the shit up, because it is, you know, quite complicated, I do have a mentorship program. It's called Brand Builders Academy. I own it with my partner Alex. If you want to join, you can fill out an application, first link in the description. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. One more ads. Peace.